Protests continue to erupt across the globe as the Israel-Hamas war rages on. Demonstrations continue to dot countries across continents, supporting both the warring sides. Hundreds of people protested outside New York's Grand Central Terminal and demanded a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The protests forced officials to shut down one of New York City's major transit hubs. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority said on its website the terminal was closed until further notice due to the protest. A pro-Palestine protest also broke out in front of the Israeli Consulate General in Canada's Toronto. And in India, dozens of people were detained as they took part in a Palestinian demonstration in New Delhi. People gathered at Jantar Mantar for a demonstration under the banner Friends of Palestine. After Friday prayers, dozens of demonstrators protested a few hundred meters from the Israeli settlement of the Bet al-Nir, the Ramallah. Now, young Palestinian men were spotted within sight of Israeli soldiers. Ambulance drivers and journalists from all over the world were also a witness to the protests. Meanwhile, supporters of Lebanon's Hezbollah demonstrated in Beirut in solidarity with Palestinians. Protesters waved Lebanese, Palestinian and Hezbollah flags and chanted slogans against Israel and the United States. Protesters also gathered after Friday prayers in Al-Nur Square in the northern Lebanese city of Tripoli in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Back in Israel, families and friends missing Israelis set up an empty Sabbath dinner table to inspire hope for the safe return of their loved ones. Vacant chairs were covered with images of those missing, while friends and family members sang and held prayers in their honor. At least 224 hostages are reported to be held in Gaza. Hamas has freed 4 hostages so far. A similar setup propped up in the United States. The Israeli-American Council set up a 222-seat empty Shabbat table in New York's Times Square. The empty chairs represent hostages held captive by Hamas in Gaza. The council called the installation a call for awareness and demanded immediate action towards their release. In France, 30 strollers with large photographs marked kidnapped were placed in the foreground of the Eiffel Tower. The photographs showed the names of the children and the strollers for the little ones that had stuffed animals in them. Now, for more on this, we spoke to retired Colonel David B. Desrochers to give us a better perspective on this. He is a professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies of the National Defense University, and he joined us from Washington, D.C. Listen in to what he had to say.
What you're seeing is an attempt to basically what we call shaping the battlefield. I think that Israel is seeking to trick Hamas's ability to reinforce different positions, their ability to shift forces among different locations. The aim of Israel, and they're probably also observing how Hamas reacts to a ground incursion, so they'll know what to expect. Their aim is to ensure that when they go in, which I don't think will be today, and I don't think it'll be within the next few days, but when they do go in, they want to know exactly what to expect. They want to know that they can isolate whatever it is they're attacking, prevent it from being reinforced so that they can destroy it and then move on to something else. Well, you know, what we've seen in the past, if you're Hamas, you're fighting an enemy that has total air superiority, has a really good intelligence network, has the ability to observe you almost continually. So how do you conceal your assets or protect your assets? There's really only 2 ways. You either put it underground or you put it in a place that Israel is not willing to fire at or cannot fire at without, you know, including significant cost. And that means generally close to a protected facility or close to a population center. So I think part of the Hamas plan is that they don't want civilians to move out. They want to ensure that they can win a strategic victory, even if they have a tactical loss, by forcing Israel to operate in areas with a large amount of civilians, which will inevitably lead to Israel killing a large amount of civilians. That is a strategic victory for Hamas, as we've already seen. I think that there's a reflexive dislike of war, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. There is a lot of suffering. There's going to be a lot of suffering. But I think that, at least in Israel, and I think the thinking behind the U.S. is that to have a ceasefire right now would basically be to enable Hamas to continue attacks targeted at civilians. I mean, we forget this now, but Israel can at least plausibly argue that the damage they've inflicted is incidental to hitting military targets that are located among civilian populations. But the Hamas raids were targeted at civilians. And I think that the United States and Israel are of the view that that cannot be allowed to be normalized. So, it's going to be contentious and people are going to argue over it for a long time. But my guess is that's the thinking.